Welcome to the Empowering Tomorrow's Automotive Software Podcast, brought to you by ETAS, a single source of cutting-edge software and hardware solutions that make automotive embedded systems safe, smart, secure, and sustainable. Each episode, we'll be joined by ETAS and industry experts to discuss how electrification, automation, and connectivity are impacting the automotive industry. Now, sit back and enjoy the discussion.
Hi, welcome everybody. Welcome back to ETAS Empowering Tomorrow's Automotive Software Podcast. Today we are covering the topic of red teaming, and we want to give you a little bit of a brief introduction. What is red teaming? Do I need red teaming? How is it conducted? And my name is René Reuter. I'm the responsible product manager here at ETAS for the enterprise security services, mainly covering penetration testing, red, blue, purple teaming engagements, and various consulting services. But today I'm not alone here. With me, I brought Wolfgang. Wolfgang is our expert in red, blue, purple teaming. So, hi, Wolfgang.
Hi, René. Thank you very much for the introduction. So, then to me, I'm Wolfgang Neufeld. I'm doing security now for about 20 years, and I've done mostly all kind of different topics. And what's I think interesting to me is how that all fits together. So I did penetration testing, I did forensics, and when I came to Bosch like 10 years ago or around that, I also came to the topic of industrial security. So and now I'm into red, blue, purple teaming all the way, writing malware, writing ransomware, doing detections for that kind of stuff. And I'm really loving it. And we hopefully can give you some insights on what is red teaming. And René will start now to try to define that.
Yes, to help you a little bit, I'm trying to explain just in brief words what is actually the definition of red teaming. So in red teaming, everything revolves around attack simulations. So what do we do there is we try to simulate real world attacks like we have seen in the past. So to give you an example, you may have heard 2 years ago, one of the major tier ones in Germany was attacked by a attacker group called Lockbit. It's basically a ransomware group. And what they did is they ransomwared not all, but a huge amount of PCs from Conti's employees and server infrastructure, and basically encrypted all of them. So on top of that, they also stole sensitive information, and they were blackmailing Conti in order to give them back an encryption key so they can decrypt their encrypted data, and they blackmailed them with a huge amount of money. In the end, Conti didn't pay the money to the company, to the Lockbit group, but afterwards the Lockbit group published a lot of confidential data they've stolen from them. Yeah, so why would you basically want to simulate this kind of attack? So what you want to have is you want to actually detect in an early phase if such kind of an attack is going to happen to your company. And this is why it's crucial to use this kind of real-world attack simulations. But question is also, for whom would it be, and what are the prerequisites for such kind of a red teaming?
So that brings us to the topic of red teaming is not for everyone. Red teaming is not basic testing. So you should really have a mature organization with all baseline security defenses in place. And you should know how to handle an incident already. So you should have a CERT, a SOC, detection engineers, all that should be in place. Be it in your company with your own employees, or have some external company that helps you with that. But if you don't have this, don't even think about doing a red teaming, because there are better things that you can do before that. And it would be a waste of money in most of the times if you do a red teaming. Red teaming is really then interesting, maybe as some kind of spot awareness. So if everyone in your company says, no, we are unhackable because we bought something from vendor XYZ, And he said to us, sure, if you just buy the premium version of our product, then you don't have to configure anything, and we will detect every security accident that is happening and every attack. Then it might be also a good thing to use red teaming to falsify this claim, because most of the time this is not right. But there are other things that you can prove that. And then red teaming, when do you really should use it? It's when you have a mature organization and say, okay, now we did everything the way we should do it, and think, okay, we are well protected. And now let's see if we can detect an attacker from the outside. And we want to test all our processes and our detections that we have in place. Then red teaming is for you. And it's also important to say red teaming, you should have some kind of open failure culture in your organization. So if an attacker comes through, and this is most of the time the case, even if you have very good protection and very good educated employees, then there should be the will to improve. So it's a simulation to say, okay, hey, we did it, or the attacker did it. What could we improve? How did he slip through? And then it is done the right way. If it's done in a blame culture, because red teaming involves something, for example, that is known as initial access. For that, you use social engineering, and the employee that clicked the email or input the username and password in that field, it gets blamed. If you have this kind of culture, then it's not the right thing, I think, for you to use red teaming. With that, coming to the point, how is it usually conducted in a company?
Perfect. Thank you. So as Wolfgang explained to you now, for whom it is necessary and what are the prerequisites, question is how it is usually conducted. So speaking of real life, real world attack simulations, they must be structured somehow. So, and what we follow there is we follow the so-called TTPs of an attacker. TTP stands for tactics, techniques, and procedures of the attackers. So what we try to do is we try to mimic the attacker as accurate as possible. So using their tools they are using, so the techniques basically, so the exact same kind of attack tools, or we try to reprogram them, and also what kind of commands are the attackers are using. So we mimic this as close as possible. But question is also, where do we get this kind of information? Good thing is we have this already in place. It is from the MITRE Corporation, the so-called attack framework. So the MITRE Corporation is very famous for the CVE database. What does it stand for? It's the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposure System, and it is maintained by the MITRE Corporation, which is basically funded by the US National Cybersecurity Division of the US Department of Homeland Security. CVEs, you might have heard it. So every time someone finds a vulnerability in an application or an operating system or somewhere else, you can basically request a CVE for that, and it gets published later on and by the CVE system of MITRE, and you can read all the specs about the vulnerability there, which was found in that specific application. And the attack framework is a little bit different. There, basically, you can search for groups like the Lockbit group, or also direct attacks like a ransomware attack. What kind of groups are using this kind of attack, and what kind of TTPs are they using? And there is really written in detail, okay, they execute the following command under Windows to escalate themselves to become admins, stuff like this. So it's very accurate. And this is what we as red teamers do for the preparation for an attack or for a simulation we are going to do. We basically ask the customer what needs to be simulated, and then we structure our simulation, our attack simulation, based on those TTPs. And we have seen this in the past, and I think coming back to the Lockbit, what I've shared previously, one of the biggest tier ones was compromised off. Question is what next arises, and I think Wolfgang can explain this a little bit more better and more in technical depth like I can do. What is actually the difference between red teaming and penetration testing, Wolfgang?
I am happy to answer that, but I want to also add something to
Sure.
the former thing, because this is one type of red team we are doing. So we are trying to simulate exactly what is out there. So if you ask us to mimic a Lockbit for you, we are happy to do that. But additional to that, we are also able to do a red team and derive more or less from the procedures or the tactics that they have and change them a little bit. Because that's what's always out there. If you buy some shiny new security product, they say, hey, we have a 100% MITRE detection rate of everything that's out there. And I believe them. Yeah, they might have that. If you just copy and paste exactly this command, you are good to go, and they will detect it. And if you have it in a mode that you can't use in real life because there are too many false positives, but for the test case, you will definitely detect and you might get the 100%. But what if an attacker changes something? So this is where our research also hits in. And for example, there are different ways on how to escalate things on Windows. And if you just change them slightly, things show then the EDRs are not the 100% security defense that is often told that they would be. So this is something that we also do. So in the end, red teaming is about a mission where it's said, okay, steal something, for example, from the CEO, try to ransom one of our PC or two or three of our PCs, and we try to detect it or change some files. And we can do that either way, either the structured way, which is known, and that should be definitely be detected, or the other way with our research where we do something on top. Now, back to the point, what is red teaming and what is a penetration test? Why should I do a red team, which is much more expensive than a penetration test most of the time? And they are quite different in the end. If you do a penetration test, you most likely have some kind of product. You're also talking about some kind of scope. At least with the good penetration testing companies, you try to define some kind of scope, what should be tested. And in the end, you most likely try as a company to convince the customer that he should give you all kind of information about the product, because in a pen test, you really want to have more likely a white box pen test where you have all the technical details, how it's set up, all the configuration files. It's about using and finding all kind of bugs in the software. You really want to find all kind of severe bugs that are, or less severe bugs that are security bugs that are in that software. You want to find all of them. And then you get a documentation out of that in the end. And then you say, okay, here you have 20 critical bugs. All of them can be misused for all kind of bad things, information disclosure, config file changes, whatever you can think of. Yeah, this is the penetration test. And in the red teaming, if you make one, if you have one vulnerability, that's enough, and the attacker will abuse it. It's more about than abusing known or unknown security problems that you might have, and then try to get the files or whatever the mission is for the red teaming and get things done. So you don't care about the completeness, and you want to get root or want to be admin of the Active Directory. It's not about that. If it's enough to steal the email of the CEO, and if you just need to guess his password and to just infiltrate the secretary in front of him, that's done. That's your job. And this is the main difference. So both make sense. And the penetration test is mostly done with all the defenses off. And the red team is there to check if all the processes and also the detections, the technical stuff is right. So one thing is to detect some kind of thing. But in red teaming, we have often seen that technical stuff works quite well. And there's a lot of alarming then. And hey, some attacker is doing this and that. But then the process in the end, nobody is doing anything with that information. And this is also something that is checked with the red teaming. And for that, it will check both. And this is what makes red teaming so interesting, to see, okay, first thing you have to detect it, but then you also have to react. And the reaction is something that has to be in time, and it has to be done with knowledge and effectively. And this is where we normally help organizations quite a lot, because there is much to improve from our experience. So going from there, we mostly talked about enterprise things now, but is red teaming also a thing in the SDV context? This is what we asked us, and René will answer that.
Thank you, Wolfgang. So, and as Wolfgang already mentioned, so the red teaming is quite common in the enterprise/offboard world, with all the cloud servers, with on-premise networks. So since a couple of years, red teaming is quite of standardized also for the enterprise offboard world. But question is, now we have the software-defined vehicle, and so the cars are connected more and more. So you have your mobile application on your phone, where you can basically see what is the geolocation of your car, where is it located, what's the fuel consumption. You can even open the trunk via API. You just push a button on your mobile app. So what actually happens there? So you have your mobile application. This basically connects to a backend system residing somewhere either at the OEM on-premise network or on the cloud or bigger hyperscaler, whatever you can think of. And the request is basically then routed via the backend towards your car using usually an API token or some other secret token to actually authenticate you that you're valid. So basically that means the car is not what the car is like 20 years ago, where there were no interconnectivity to other systems. Basically, the car was on its own. So nowadays, if we look a little bit also in the past, there were also hacks possible. So there was a very famous, like 10 years ago, Jeep Cherokee hack by Charlie Miller. I think he manipulated even the brakes in the end. I'm not so familiar with that hack. I'm sorry, can't give any details there. But also, I think 2 or 3 years ago, there was one of the famous Tesla Model 3 hacks, where they basically found a way to extract this kind of secret token, this API token, from an unauthenticated endpoint. And we're basically misusing this, what I just mentioned before with the examples, to actually determine the geolocation of a Tesla Model 3. They were able to open the trunk. They were able to read a lot of statistics like energy capacity, battery lifetime, how many charging life cycles the battery has gone through. So a lot of also sensitive information were readable by that. And Tesla provides a huge API for their cars. So if you look it up on Tesla API on their homepage, you will find a very good documentation that basically you can extract a lot of information and also execute commands within the Tesla if you have access via this API token. So this is very crucial. So what we see now is the onboard and offboard world, they are more getting closer and closer together. And this would also make sense then to do some kind of real world attack simulations covering offboard and onboard as well. But besides the cars, we think there might be also a different kind of attack possible. Instead of attacking directly the car, how about the supply chain, Wolfgang?
Yeah, this is something where we were thinking about, okay, how can we do some kind of red teaming in the SDV context? And we came up with an attack that we talked about a lot with developers of the SDV. And yeah, they are using the normal Mac, the normal Windows, the normal Linux system for development, for programming their firmware, their software that in the end lands on an ECU. And if you look at that, what is the difference to compromise a developer for an SDV context to a normal developer for websites or for cloud things? Nothing in the end. So what we came up with was some kind of supply chain attack that simulates exactly that. So we wanted to infiltrate one of the developers that is developing something for the firmware, and then overtake his PC and then inject some malicious code into his code base, then hope that the 4i principle fails in the end. This is something that is quite good if you have that as a security principle. But most of the time, if we are realistic in the end, if a senior developer puts something in and you know that guy, why, and he always writes good code, and then it's in the evening. Yeah, most of the time this will go through. And then everything, the whole security that you have nowadays in the automotive context might be compromised in the end. Because if you have a signed firmware image that is then distributed over the air in the end to all the automotive systems, yeah, they will happily accept this kind of firmware. So it's mostly about then designing systems and finding out, okay, what can be compromised over there. There are some security measures for sure and safety things that you can't manipulate over that way. But in the end, it's quite a powerful attack, and it could compromise quite a lot of fleets in the end if that goes undetected. So this is what we came up with, and yeah, we did that for some customers already, and it was really interesting to see the outcome in the end. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for the explanation for this kind of supply chain attack. Sounds really interesting. I do have one last question for you, Wolfgang, which I would like to discuss with you. I think it's not a really easy question because there is no black and white or right or wrong answer directly. But I wanted to discuss with you a little bit the question, what do you think would be preferred, an internal red team or a red team coming from an external, so a different company? What would you prefer?
Oh yeah, that's really a difficult question. I like both in the end because yeah, we are doing it. Of course, we are doing it for Bosch at one point. So we are also more or less internals. Also, we are seen as externals, as ETAS for them, but we are part of the Bosch group. We definitely have more information to Bosch than an external, and so I think it makes sense to have this kind of red teaming also, because in the end it's more about, it's all about having a skilled attacker. So if he somehow gets that information and an external can get that information, it all depends on how much time and money he is spending on that. He might get to the knowledge of an internal, so you're taking a shortcut and then testing from that and having some internal weak spots that you think, okay, nobody knows this because he would have to know this and this and that. And then in the end, okay, but if an attacker knows, then you get compromised, yeah, if he somehow gets that information. So it makes sense, in my opinion, to have an internal team if you can afford it. But you have to be a quite big company. It's definitely not something where if you have a company with less than 50 or 100 employees, don't ever think about building up an internal red team. This is something for global companies like Bosch and yeah, the big ones. Then it makes sense, in my opinion, and also to have this on an ongoing basis. Yeah, so let's say okay, we have 3 or 4 tests internally and see if that works, and they can also better align some topics where we say, okay, we have heard of this and that security problem. Hey, dear internal pentest, can you just go that, maybe taking some shortcuts, maybe having something done quicker than doing the whole alignment with an external partner. So there are benefits. And from the other side, the external partners, they really also know what they are doing, and having a different view on that topic and new ideas, what an internal might be blind to after years, that's also something very valuable. And then also exchanging the teams with their research. There are really, really very good red teamers out there that more or less can simulate real world advanced persistent threat and real APTs, not something, real APTs. They can simulate that. There are few out there, but they can really do it. So it makes sense in both ways to me.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you, especially for this continuous red teaming, where you have it regularly. There would make sense to have some kind of internal team instead of having this huge external campaigns. But I think where it might make sense to have really an external red team is a part which we have not covered today, is basically that red teaming is not only technical. There could also be that you do social engineering engagements. And for that, I would say usually, okay, this must be done by an external red team, because the chances to get detected because someone knows you if you're an internal red team, I would say, are much more higher than if you're really an external company nobody knows. So, but that only covered for this kind of special simulation.
Yeah, and especially if you do some kind of physical social engineering. So, if you go there and try to break into something, then I know you. Okay, then you can already stop.
Yes,
because there is some kind of trust already there, and and then you falsify
the results. Yeah,
the
exactly.
Results, exactly.
Okay, I think we got the topic red teaming briefly covered. I hope you enjoyed our little introduction to this topic. More will come. So in the next episode, we will talk a little bit more about blue teaming. So what are the defense teams are doing? And then we also planned a third episode where we basically will talk about purple teaming. So bringing it all together. So again, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Wish you a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining this episode of the Empowering Tomorrow's Automotive Software podcast. Please leave a comment or review with your feedback or what you'd like to hear in future episodes. To learn more about automotive embedded systems and ETAS's capabilities, visit our website at ETAS. That's ETAS.com.